The next question in this segment of how COVID is impacting your business is the change in demand structure. This is a big topic with the closure of schools, restaurants, and hospitality industries. Let's start with John, you on this one, if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure. I thought I would address this sort of on two levels. One, the commodity turkey side, and then also what we've seen on our kind of our micro level. So the commodity turkey world, like most of the other proteins and most of the other commodities, has really fallen apart, fallen off the shelf over these past couple of weeks, and particularly on the cuts that were really driven by food service, of course. So the extremely weak spot for turkey right now is breast meat demand. You think about a lot of turkey breast meat is consumed in deli sandwiches or at a casino buffet, those type of settings. All of those channels are gone, and so we have a very imbalanced situation. Just like in the world of pork or cattle, you don't raise an animal for one cut. You need to find a good home for all the cuts that come off that animal. And so the commodity turkey world is in a tough spot right now because of that significant reduction in food service demand. One interesting just kind of sidebar, the demand that we've seen on whole-bodied turkeys has actually stayed relatively strong. And that's true not just for us, but also nationally. It's certainly not enough to buoy the loss of food service demand, but it is interesting that typically in April, nobody's buying a whole turkey. And so I think it speaks to the way that people are eating when they're at home, and maybe able to prepare, bigger meals to spend with their family. And so it's been kind of an interesting trend to observe that the one bright spot in the turkey markets has been whole turkeys. In our own world, about 50% of our product typically goes to food service, and that's a mix of restaurants, colleges, schools. We do some corporate dining. And like I said in the intro, the impact for us was so immediate. I mean, the earth felt like it shifted so fast, where we all of a sudden had distributors canceling orders that were sitting on our dock. We have some products that we make specifically for K-12 schools that were on order and menued through the remainder of the school year that went away, and so that product goes into the freezer, and we'll wait until hopefully fall when things resume. But I don't think I can say enough how immediate and how disruptive that shift in supply was. There was a really strong surge in retail demand, but as I'm sure we'll all talk about and will be said many times, those products don't easily translate. And so we've had significant demand on some items that we can't keep up with, and then other products that are typically top movers that we're not selling a case during a typical week. So pretty startling to see the change.
So if you were to estimate your percentage overall, because you said 50% of the loss came from the hospitality food service, overall your business, with some products increasing and some decreasing, what do you think your percentage loss has been?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I mean, like so much of this situation has changed week to week. The first couple of weeks, to be honest, the retail demand was so strong that it accounted almost pound for pound for what we lost in food service. Now these last 2 or 3 weeks, that hasn't been the story. We'd be down 40% or so over these past couple of weeks with the loss of food service. And again, with no real end in sight on that. I mean, that looks like it's going to persist for quite some time.
Yeah, the uncertainty is certainly hard. Can't plan for that. How about you, Natasha? The impact on demand structure.
Yeah, so milk and beef has typically not been awesome for a while, years actually, especially milk. And it was just starting to rebound, and then this happened. So kind of depressing, but I mean, it's the thing about farmers, and what I tell everybody is farmers are the most optimistic people I've ever met in my whole life. And we have a lot of optimism going into this, but yeah, milk prices is down. Projections are very low for May, and for beef for a while. And the dairy industry is milk. However, the second career of a dairy cow is beef. So it is all very connected. Right now, the hardest thing is that the exports pretty much disappeared. So 16 to 17% of milk was exported, and that more or less is gone. That doesn't really exist right now. And then about a third of the market in the US goes to food service, which includes schools. So we're all going to say that is a huge effect on our market. If you think about how all those items were packaged for food service or schools in larger quantity, larger cuts, used for buffets, things like that, a lot of it just isn't translatable to the retail market. And that's where a lot of consumers have questions like, well, we get limited on milk. Why are people not being able to sell milk when we don't have enough milk? And that is such a good question, but a lot of it is we don't have an infrastructure in the processing of the agricultural products into food products that really exists for this, for everybody really buying retail. So a lot of the conversations I know the cattlemen's groups are having, all right, we have these tenderloins, right? Tenderloins go to food service. Well, are consumers interested in buying tenderloins? I mean, we don't know. How would we do that? And so we're actually really interested from hearing from consumers in the beef world to say, like, what are you willing to do at this point? And I think all of us will probably say that. What are you willing to do? What are you willing to cut up yourself? Right? So that's one of the really big things. So grocery stores are actually up, which is great. People want their dairy products. They want their beef. Ground beef costs have gone up, if you have not noticed, retail wise. However, the ground beef that's being sold is often a grind of cuts that are usually higher quality. So that's why the price is going up. It's not necessarily because of demand, even though that's up, because I'm pretty sure the world is like casserole and hot dish based right now. Which is so cool. I'm a Minnesota girl, right? So hot dish is
hot dish, right?
The rest of the world is casserole. So 20 to 25% of people are not eating things because they just don't have access to it. So even though grocery stores are up, about 20 to 25% of retail and grocery store buyers, they just don't have the milk or the yogurt or the cheese or whatever it may be. It's just not there. So they can't buy it, even though they would buy it. So there definitely is a lot of market disruption and definitely affecting a lot of different things. I know that a lot of people have questions on this dumping milk. And I want to just make sure everyone understands why that's happening. So I'll give you the 10,000 foot view of why that's happening. So it's not that there isn't demand, because there is. And you probably hear us say that today, there is demand. However, we have basically processors that aren't set up in the way that we are. So they're getting too much milk and they can't pay for all the milk. So they're asking for a reduced milk from the farmers. So some of the farmers are having to repurpose their milk. And for us, that means it goes into the manure basin and then we actually use it as fertilizer. So it's not lost. It still has value. It is just going to be used for something else that's not a high value. So it's not bringing money in necessarily. However, there is a use to it. We're not just like dumping it somewhere else. I mean, it goes to be used, right? So I want to make sure everyone understands that, because that's really, really important. But dairy farmers basically have kind of a double whammy right now when it comes to price decreases, because the milk price has gone down, plus they aren't able to sell all the milk that they have. So it's just that there's a double thing happening there, which is why it's really affecting a lot of dairy farmers. And then if a dairy farmer thinks, I'm just going to sell, I'm just going to be done, I maybe I'm getting close to retirement or whatever. Well, there's not a way to sell your cows right now, really. So you can't even do that. So there's this huge question mark out there of how long this will be and all those things. So the market's not positive. However, farmers are still going to do what they got to do to take care of their animals, their people, and their land. I would say that has not changed at all. We are still doing the exact same care of everything that we always have. We just have to be able to weather the storm through the prices. As far as beef goes, like I said, it's the same thing, but once and most of us that are working in market livestock, it's like once you have fat cattle, they don't keep. They're fat. They gotta go. Like they gotta go to market. So we have to keep processing plants open. And that is starting to see some effects in processing. And I know that pigs are going to talk way more about that. But as far as the cattle side, we still have a lot of processing open. However, we have to keep all those people healthy too. So like everyone's talking about, it's a wave of all sorts of things you don't even think about when it comes to food.
Yeah, and just to put it in a human perspective, I mean, put yourself in the farmer's shoe, is that you're going to work and you're not only not getting paid, but you're losing money. And that's what's happening on a daily basis. And it's just kind of heart-wrenching to think about the impact both mentally and physically on all of this stress and this
one thing I
uncertainty.
just want to really quick add on the dairy side is dairy farmers are super smart, right? I mean, and processors are really smart. Like, this is not a problem that's never happened. In the spring, we usually do have more milk production because that's just what happens in the spring. And farmers have had to figure out ways of changing a herd a little bit, or, you know, doing some things like repurposing that milk for fertilizer before that. I mean, that's not new. It's just at a higher level right now.
Right. You know, every industry plans and projects and does models for demand shifts throughout the year, but this is just an abrupt stoppage that is, you can't plan for, you can't anticipate it. I mean, it's just something that makes ripple effects through the whole supply chain. So yeah, good job, Natasha. And Jody, how about you on the pork side?
Well, I would say not a tremendous amount to add other than what John and Natasha have already said. I would say in the pork side of things, we too are seeing it from a double whammy, as Natasha said, and the price of the animals coming down and the value of that product, as well as the inability to ship pigs in some cases. So I'll first talk about the kind of the loss in demand and the food service part of it, because about 70% of the bacon that is produced is sold into the food service industry. You know, whether it's bacon in breakfast, if it's on top of a burger, if it's on top of a salad. I mean, bacon has kind of become America's sweetheart of condiments. So thanks, beef, for giving us a place to put our bacon. So interestingly, before all of this, the belly, which is the part of the cutout that the bacon comes from, was the highest value cutout. And as John said, you have to have a place for all of the cutout, for all of the parts, if you're really going to be profitable and converting the resources into food and make the most out of that. And so now it's really pretty incredible that bacon has completely fallen off the radar from a value perspective, and it doesn't have a home. So like John mentioned, so there is some bacon that's going into freezer space for use when the food service industry opens back up. But I would also say that there is some product that's being rendered and repurposed into like things like pet food and other industries where some of the protein can't be consumed by the human food supply chain. Agreed very, very much on the translation of products from retail into the grocery, or excuse me, from the food service into the grocery section, and the size of packaging, the type of cuts, and what people are willing to prepare at home. But like Natasha said as well, we're seeing a shift in really those comfort foods. And so back to the loins, back to the basics of knowing of kind of those simple recipes that can be done at home. And I'm with you, a good old casserole is the comfort food we all need right now. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jody.